Afternoon, everyone. Robert Clinkenbeard with the Wilson360 group. Excited to be sharing the traction EOS format to you. I'm going to pull up my slide presentation here. We've got our wonderful team leader, Pam, on the call today joining us, and Seth. So I'm going to get into the presentation here and then send the recording to you, and feel free to share this to your leadership team, management team, and if I can help at all with advice or implementation of EOS their system, then feel free to reach out. So I'm going to pull up the slideshow here. Share my screen. Pam, everything looking good on your end as I pull it up into presentation mode?
Looks good, Robert.
Okay. It's not in presentation mode though yet, is correct?
Yeah. There you go.
Is that good now? Okay.
Yeah, looks good.
Cool. Okay. So everybody knows who I am. Don't need to go into any detail here, but we're going to be talking about EOS, which is coming from the book Traction by Gino Wickman. I had a great podcast this morning with Leslie out at Greenscape, and she was just talking about the huge value they've seen with implementing EOS within their company, just to help scale and grow their company and help with some of their acquisition piece. Here's a little bit about Wilson360 for those new people listening to the call. These are some of the services that we provide. We're trying to continually expand our team, offer different services. So these are all our different services that we provide. Wilson360 Plus. This is a new offering to some of our non-peer group clients. These are new industry business owners in the landscape space. If they're looking to join a community, these are some of the offerings to help them be part of this community. There's so many people out there that feel as though they're on an island trying to deal with challenges, where if they join this community, then they could get advice from others, they can network with others, they can ask questions on our Slack system, get discounted pricing on coaching, online courses, or benchmarking. We're in the thick of the benchmarking right now, and Steve Steele has done an amazing job with really upgrading the benchmarking this year. And you would get fast track into some of our elite peer groups, which Seth belongs to. Thought leader retreat, we have this, getting a lot of excitement around that. Our registration is just opening up right now. July 29th to 31st in Denver, Colorado at the Four Seasons. We have some local peer group members in that region, and they're super excited seeing the Four Seasons, a great event. And then talking to Joe Kajawa, we have some great speakers lined up for that event. So looking forward to seeing you there. Again, this is who I am. I'm going to quickly go through that. But yeah, I've been using EOS scaling up for probably 10, 12 years. It's just really great to have a platform to be able to use to grow your business, have some similar language, have some focus on where the company is going. So really great program out there. And we're going to jump into it right now. So EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System, has 6 fundamentals that are core to any business. It requires 4 different mindset shifts. Don't do everything yourself. I see that so much going on with owners trying to feel as though they don't necessarily have any trust with some of their either leadership team or management team, and they try and end up doing it themselves. So really have a powerful leadership team to help take some of the weight off your shoulders and empower them to help run the business for you. And that allows you to become that true visionary. If you read the book Traction, it talks about that different roles between the visionary role and that implementer role. the visionaries going out, looking at acquisitions, where's the company going, coming up with ideas for the company. And then the implementer is the one who effectively filters out the good and the bad ideas and implements the ones that are great ideas to really propel the company forward. The other mind shift is pushing through any types of growth ceilings. Again, a lot of companies get into different plateaus, and they won't necessarily see any issues, see any challenges or barriers. Whereas if you have that defined role between the visionary and the implementer role, it just helps them see the challenges they're facing or any ceilings or any plateaus, and build some systems and processes around breaking through those. Integrating the system into one system. We all have things like Aspire and GPS, but EOS is really just that one operating system that creates some rhythms and some discipline in your company. We all have experienced really boring meetings going forever and go off track, go in different directions. So EOS will help bring some structure to those meetings. And just be open-minded to be able to face some of those vulnerabilities, make some of those tough decisions that sometimes we all tend to steer away from. 6 business basics within EOS. You have the vision. Where's the company going? We talk about finding it tough to try and find new employees, but we also have to look about how do we retain our existing employees, and by having that clear vision where the company is going, that purpose, where's the company going, really helps with retaining those clients. So be clear in your vision. People, I'm often asked, what's the things I see most challenging in companies, and usually it ends up being around people. We've all heard the term, right people, on the bus, in the right seats, doing the right things. So having a really great leadership team to be able to take your vision and implement it. So really some really tough decisions around, do you have the right people in the bus? That's one of the first things I ask companies to do, is really evaluate their team, and I can share some tools to be able to help you do that. Traction, it's all great to have a vision, where's the company going, but really tough to then, put rubber to the road to make sure those things happen. So by using EOS, we'll just help to implement those things, get some structure, some discipline around that. Then issues, those are the things that come up, on a daily, weekly basis. So to be able to put them in some type of filing system, to be able to rank them, to decide what are the issues, what are the priorities of the issues, what are the ones we should tackle at our weekly meetings, I think is really key. Otherwise, you can just get so real wrapped up in things that hit your desk on a daily basis. Process, a lot of companies struggle developing some structure and processes to make almost like create that playbook. I talked about that in one of my podcasts this morning. If you create that playbook, and a lot of it's around processes, then it gives you, again, a real good platform to grow your company. And then data. Data is huge. We're getting hit by data through the CRM systems, through ERP systems like Aspire or Boss, GPS systems. So having that data and being able to know how to analyze it and then pull out the data we need to help make the right decisions is really crucial with the growth of your company. Going to each one. Vision, again, develop, really spend some time in developing and communicating a strong vision. Where's the company going in the next 3, 5, 10 years? It could be looked at in terms of either revenue potential, it could be expansion into different markets, maybe become a regional player. And then once you get that vision set, then being able to communicate that with your team, really encourage all hands type meeting with your team to be able to convey that vision to your team. Certainly, no more than, probably quarterly would be ideal. have that all hands meeting and be able to share that vision with your team. Super important. And the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer, this is how you display that vision with your team. It has on, your core values. It has on your core focus. What's the purpose behind your company? Who are the people we're trying to serve? Is it a niche market, certain type of clients, certain geographic area? By having all this documented on your VTO, your Vision Traction Organizer, really helps get the company around those different items, the key aspects. 10-year goal, where are you going to be in 10 years? Again, that could be a revenue, geography, it could become, going towards a national company. But, by the visionary creating that vision and getting buy-in from the team is really a part of this process. And then, to help with that growth strategy, then, developing some type of a marketing strategy that supports that. Again, what's your target clients? What's your target market? What are the 3 uniques you're trying to convey? All landscape companies in your market could be saying they're great, cut the grass, it's green, no weeds, flowers are great. But, what are your differentiators? What are your 3 uniques? And are you promoting them correctly in your marketing plan? What does that guarantee look like? And then develop, figure out what's your strengths within your company. What's your proven process? How do we do things successfully? How do we do things better than competition, and try and document that and go all in on some of your unique differentiators? 3-year picture. So you start off with the 10, 15 years out. It's obviously sometimes people find that tough to grasp. But if you come back in closer to that 3 years, people can almost start to feel that. People can sort of wrap their head around where you're going to be in 3 years. Again, that could be a revenue, could be geography, but just be really clear where you want to be in 3 years. Give something people to strive for. What does your 1-year plan look like? Again, it's getting a little bit more dialed in. I've been working with a lot of people to figure out where they want to be at the end of 2024. And then what are some of the 3 to 7 things the company really needs to focus on? Do you need to build out a sales team or have a sales plan in place? Is it working on processes? Is it developing, EOS or some type of platform? Is it looking at some type of a CRM type system, bringing that into the company? What are the 3 to 7 things within the company they need to be working on? And then trying to break that down into 90-day quarterly rocks, just to try and help them achieve towards what their annual initiatives are. So I suppose a great example could be, if you're looking to develop, if you don't have a marketing plan, then maybe by the end of a quarter, you could things like, well, who's our ideal client? What's some of the persona of that client we're looking for? Who spends the most money? What type of market do we want to focus on? If you're currently in the commercial real estate, then maybe you want to move into HOA market. So maybe you do some exploration around that. So trying to break down those 90-day rocks, what you're going to do over the next 90 days to help work towards your annual priorities. And they need to be smart. They need to be, measurable, attainable. They just need to be some type of a finish line to make them a SMART goal. And then issues. What are some of the barriers that are going to come up on a weekly, monthly basis that's going to upset those goals? We all experience things like employee issues. Maybe there's a lawsuit that comes in to distract people. But there's issues going to constantly be bombard you, and they could easily distract you. So you need to figure out a way in how you're able to handle them. And then communicate that VTO, the vision traction organizer, have it on display around your office. Maybe it's your front entrance, maybe you have a information area within your company, maybe you have different branches. So how are you going to communicate that plan? Yes, you do your rollout at your all hands meeting, your company meeting, but then have that on display so that people can see that and refer to that. Next section I want to go into, this is the section that most people really struggle with, is the people. Getting the right people in the right seats. And the thing I add on there, coming from scaling up, is doing the right thing. A lot of people have joined the company past years, they're maybe a tenured employee, but perhaps they're not the right person for take the company to the next level. If you want to double your company in the next 3, 5, 10 years, do they have that capability? So identifying the right people to get the share your core values. It's going to thrive in your culture. There's a couple tools out there. EOS has a system called the People Analyzer, where you're evaluating them based on your core values. Scaling Up has a similar tool. It's called the Talent Assessment Tool. Certainly happy to provide those tools to you if you want to evaluate your team. But one of the questions I ask, to cut through some of those exercises, would you enthusiastically rehire them again? And it's interesting when you start asking that question, and 8 times out of 10 is usually a no. So, but doing that regular communication or evaluation of your team, and I encourage quarterly evaluations of your team just to make sure they are the right people on the bus. And then making sure they're in the right team. A lot of you are aware I do personality assessments just to find out, their strengths, weaknesses, where's their traits. And often, I find that a few people on your team, great people, but perhaps they've evolved into a role that doesn't fit their traits or their skills. So going through that evaluation of your employees, and maybe you have a great person, but maybe they're just not in that right seat, but maybe there's some other seat that they could really excel at. So really look at, who the right people are, put them in the right seats, figure out a way and almost like creating that 3-strike rule. And then having some great tools in EOS about accountability chart. It's almost like an org chart, and you put in, where's the right fit, starting at the visionary and the implementer, but then who are the people that report to that implementer? And then start building out what the job description looks like. Maybe there's 3 to 5 key performance indicators within each role, but starting to build out what that accountability chart looks like really helps to sort of shape the organization to grow from it and scale the company. I'm going to pause there just to make sure there's no questions. Don't see any, so I'm just going to move on. Again, we talked about matching the staff's unique ability, what their strengths are. And I think that's just a constant thing. I really encourage quarterly reviews. Doesn't necessarily have to be long, 20, 30 minutes. If you're reviewing somebody on a monthly basis in terms of if they're matching, they're hitting those KPIs, then those quarterly reviews should be really quick, 20, 30 minutes. People should almost expect, almost like self-perform or self-assess. So when you come to those reviews, it shouldn't be a shock to them if they're either exceeding those goals or falling below par. Seth, do you have any questions before I move on?
None at this point. Good information. Appreciate it.
Cool. And then, as I say, using that accountability chart, again, I've got all this in my depth of tools that I'm happy to share with any of the owners here. But the accountability chart, define the roles, finding out, what are those big roles you need in a company, whether it's an ops manager, whether it's finance, the integrator, the visionary, the sales manager. Really good to define those buckets. I usually find that if people are trying to fill two of those roles, then they're going to get at best 50% performance, if not less. So really trying to define who's responsible for those different roles, I think is super beneficial. Yeah, one person really has to be accountable for each role. If you've got mixed roles in there trying to get, then you're going to get mixed results, and then you're wondering why they're failing. Okay, moving on now to traction. How do we actually implement? How do we be successful at implementing our plan? So we've got there identifying the right people, but where I see the best results is to try and break down those goals, those annual goals, into just small bite-sized chunks, those small bursts, those 90-day bursts. And if you think about it, if you have 10, 12 rocks goals in that 90 days, and then you multiply that by obviously 4 quarters, it's amazing how much you can achieve. So you're looking to do 3 to 5 rocks for each leadership team member, and then just make sure they're clear. As I say, we talk about smart rocks. What's that finish line? And then make sure they're very clear about what that finish line looks like, the deadline it needs to be done by. And they are 100% aligned. They're 100% on board with owning that rock. A lot of time I've seen rocks being created, but there's little discussion around who's going to actually own that and whether they fully understand it. The next is meeting pulse. What are those meetings? What do those rhythms look like in a company? These are sort of my recommendations or recommendations that come through EOS. The quarterly meetings, typically 8 hours. So set aside a full day, preferably off-site. You don't want any distractions. Have your leadership team there. Your annual meeting, again, that should be off-site. And, you could even, I recommend 2 days, especially in the larger companies, but you could even build in a third day. You could maybe have a fun team building event. Good way to sort of, get everybody comfortable with sharing things with each other. The critical piece of this is the weekly meetings, those 90 minutes, creating a rhythm, driving progress, solving issues. The format that should be used is an L10, level 10 meeting. And again, I have that information that I can share if you reach out to me. But the L10 is really a well-structured meeting format that cuts out all the the side talk, all the fluff there, and it goes into things like the scorecard, and each have a very defined amount of time you spend in each section. So there's scorecard, there's the people part, there's a section, biggest sections around issues within the company and how we're going to solve those issues. But 90-minute meeting using that L10 format is really one of the crucial parts to EOS and getting things done. And here's a good sort of visual part on how to see the rocks here. So, you probably can relate to this, where every day we wake up in the morning typically and we look at our, inbox, and we're starting to deal with, things that jump in our inbox. Maybe there's a fire, maybe there's an employee issue. We get pulled into that. That's the sand you'll see on that right-hand side. So you're dealing with those, the minutia, all the daily things that come up that are distracting to us. And then we start to think about, well, I need to start allocating time to work on those bigger projects, those rocks. So by the time we think about that, usually we're exhausted, we just don't have any capacity to work on that. And you can see that on the right-hand side here. Whereas if you look at this jar on the left, if you block off some time to work on the rocks, and I call this quality time blocks, QTBs. If you're locking in, 2 or 3 half-hour blocks, maybe on a daily basis, you're able to work on those bigger rocks, those bigger things, those needle movers in the company. Still allocate time for the things that come up. Those are never going to go away. The fires, the employee issues, the other things that crop up. But by allocating time and dedicating time, non-distracted time to work on those rocks are really going to propel your company. So here's your rocks. Specific, measurable, attainable. Really I want to give an example of this one. So if we wanted to have a rock for Q2 around hiring a sales manager, we would go off and perhaps go in different directions. Break it down into smaller tasks. First thing might be a job description. Then the next measurable could be posting the job onto Indeed or one of the other platforms out there. The next measurable might be, the interview process. The next measurable could be the actual hiring, doing an offer letter, offer being accepted. And then once that person joins the company, then the onboarding happens next. So you're breaking them down into smaller tasks. So again, they need to be specific, they need to be measurable, achievable, relevant. They need to be in line with your annual company priorities, and they need to be time-based. And those time based are based on those 90-day rocks, usually the end of each quarter. But breaking them down into smaller bite-sized chunks just makes them a little bit more, I suppose, a little bit more achievable. And focus on them. If you try and achieve your annual ones and just try and achieve those annual ones, then you'll quickly lose focus. You'll get distracted by all the sand we saw earlier. So breaking them down to the 90-day, breaking them down into even smaller tasks will just make them a lot more achievable when you're able to focus on them. And then 3 to 5 rocks per person or per company priority. Again, I've seen that as being the best practice. So many companies now using EOS and swear by it. There's obviously a reason for that. If you stick to the best practices, then you're gonna achieve the best success. If you go off track or try and reinvent the wheel, then usually that will come to the program coming to a halt, or you'll lose some of that momentum. Next one is issues. Issues come up all the time. So have some type of a place where you can log issues rather than people feel as though they come to your office and give you that issue that you have to deal with. Try and discipline them or direct them into a way that they log the issues that come up into some type of database or place where they could just put those issues they are ready for your weekly L10 meeting. So have an issues list. Could be a Google Doc, it could be some type of form in SharePoint, but have a place where your leadership team can log those issues. And then issues defined are, if you've got your quarterly rocks, your annual goals, then what are some of the obstacles preventing people achieving that? And just create that open space where issues can be flagged and tackled at all different levels within the company. And then just have different lists. What are the issues over 90 days? Bring those issues to the weekly meetings. You might break down that L10 meetings to department level, division level. So have those different issues in place. And then resolve those top issues with IDS. IDS is, you'll see this here, is identify what are the real underlying issues. People might come to you with a specific problem or issue, but once you start asking some key questions, then you'll usually find there's some underlying issue there. And then one of the other things I actually discussed with Leslie this morning is try and prioritize them. Figure out if, you may have 50 issues on a list. There's no way you're going to get to those 50 on the list. So try and identify, what are the top 3 or 5. And then when you go into your L10 meeting, again, reaffirm what are the top 3 to 5 issues, and then go through the top one first. It may take you a whole meeting to resolve that issue, which is fine, but at least it's that biggest issue that's been resolved and people can continue on trying to knock out the rocks. You may end up getting 6 to 10 achieved in that meeting, depending what those issues are. But the real key thing is don't just go off the list of 50 things based on when people put it in. You have to have some evaluation of determining what are the most important issues you need to tackle. What's the things that really are affecting the company as a whole? And that's what you need to focus on first. Processes. How do you systemize the way of doing things? Again, document the core processes. I usually, when I bring this up in companies, the first thing I'll ask is, do people have processes in place? And usually they'll show me a bit of paper, handwritten, not necessarily doing any great help or purpose. So I usually encourage people to, what are the top 10 core processes in the business? That could be a sales process. It could be a handoff from a sale, something sold, to actually getting in the ground. So identify what are the top 10 core processes that really run your business, and then start to document them. Find some way on, finding a template they're able to document those processes. Again, identify, name them, 6 to 10 processes, document each one. Use that 80-20 rule. 80% time is going to, really affect your business. Define how it's linked to your unique system. Try and have some type of a book or some central storage place that you could put those processes. Central database. I see so many companies that will bring a new employee in and do a fairly basic way of onboarding an employee. I think one of the key parts of onboarding a new employee in the first 90 days is then being able to go through what processes you have documented so they can learn the different systems in place. And then once you have those processes in place, then don't just sit in them, don't let them just collect dust. Have some type of a review. Maybe they're reviewed every 3 to 6 months. So really document some of those processes and make sure they're they're constantly reviewed, and then have one person own each process. Maybe there's something really, an engineer, somebody with an engineering background that could look after some of the processes, or maybe the sales manager could own the sales process. Maybe there's your CFO could own the financial process, but have an owner for each of your processes. And then present them visually. I encourage, let's get some of these processes up on a whiteboard, every 3 to 6 months, and bring the leadership team in and get some feedback from the rest, find out how they can affect or influence a process being successful or not. Technology is constantly changing. So, is there a new piece of technology that's been introduced to the company that's now affecting or making your process need to be adjusted and more streamlined? So you've got to have some type of way on not only documenting, reviewing them, but be open to updating and just asking that question, is this still working or is this redundant now? And one of the key things here is rolling out. It's all very well to develop a new process, but it needs to be rolled out company-wide to the people that are affected by this process. And make sure it's being adopted. Are you training them on it? Are they being educated? Are you being reminded of that process? These are all key things. Yeah, I was talking to a company yesterday, and they probably spent the last 9 months developing processes, almost like a policy procedures document. And they were so proud of it, but I then asked the question, well, have you rolled this out yet? And of course, the answer was no, they hadn't got to that yet. So, you've got to really, look at what you've developed and then roll it out and remind people and constantly go back to it and refresh that so people understand it. And then data, get the pulse in your business. I talked about this earlier, with so much data to hand now, how are we using that data? Leslie this morning was talking about, they have access between their own internal system, between Aspire, they have, the dashboards or dials. And I think they had 50 plus, key data points or scorecards or dials. But, when you roll it out to your team members, make sure you understand their capabilities or what's going to really make a difference in the company. So once you've developed that scorecard, then again, rolling that out to your team members and potentially consider dialing that back to, 3 to 5 things that will really affect how they perform, which will in turn affect how you scale your business and how it's run. Have, 5 to 15 activity-based numbers. The things, examples could be labor hours, actual versus budgeted. It could be sales, actual sales versus proposals. The CFO could have some numbers about AR, AP, when they close the books every month. So have some real KPIs or scoreboard numbers that really summarizes how the business does, but how they're performing. Set the weekly goals. Who's accountable? Who's updating the scorecard? Where are they getting that information from? Is it transparent information? Do people have transparency or trust in those numbers? No point in giving somebody, 3 numbers or KPIs that they don't understand and they don't know where the numbers are coming from. They're just not going to buy into it. So you really have to be clear on, how you assign those numbers and get buy-in, and have measurables for everybody. You could even get down to that crew level, and typically what's going to happen, make a difference there is hours management, quality of the job. I think a lot of you do quality scores. So, you look at these quality scores, you could have things like safety numbers, you could have things around driving, near misses, speed, alerts, you could have numbers around idling hours. So there's so many numbers to choose from. It's just a case of how do you cascade those numbers down to everybody in the company? And then ideally have one meaningful, manageable number for every person in the company. A lot of time when but back before I knew a lot of this stuff, a lot of our reviews were based on how that employee performed 10, 20 days before the actual review. And if that person had messed up on something, then usually their review was based on that recent incident. Whereas if you have those numbers, 1-3 numbers, that the supervisor can rate them on, but also the employee is going to know themselves. They're going to know how they're performing even going into that meeting. They're going to know if it's going to be a good or bad meeting. But make all that transparent throughout the company. And those numbers are, again, are supposed to help to motivate, to build teamwork. You should be able to, if you've got a great culture, they should be able to help encourage and inspire each other. So that's a pretty good overview of EOS. I'll say I have a lot of tools, information I can share around this. I tie a lot of the scaling up tools into this as well. Some of them have better strengths in some areas around strategy. Both great programs, both came from the same thought leaders around good to great. So they've just taken them and packaged them up in different ways, but having some type of system in your company that creates numbers, measurable, accountability, creating that one vision, that one platform and language that people can talk about really will help companies scale. This is not going to happen overnight. It probably takes 3 to 6 months before people get into a good rhythm using this program. But it's something I can't talk highly enough about. It's just such a great program. So, Seth, I've been talking too much. Any takeaways from that? Anything, questions you have around what I've shared so far?
No, it's a really good templated plan to keep you on track and move forward. The big challenge always can be is the root of and what the root of information, the root of your baseline, the root that gets you to some of this, the track that then takes you further, and some of these things that you describe. And it's good that you went into even some more depth on, okay, take it one bite at a time. It's not going to happen overnight, but you got to, okay, here's what we want. Here's what we want as our goals. But do we have the information accessible that can take us to where we want to be? So, the challenge that we've dealt with for so many years is because we're a 70-year-old business, it's the conversion and transformation to get some of that data. And so we work on it regularly. And whether you think it's easy or not, as a new business, you can start off on the right foot. So it gets challenging. So it's really good to hear some of this stuff to keep you on track, and then continue to focus on what is the root opportunity, root information, root baseline that's needed in order for these platforms to be successful.
Yeah. And then just making sure that you have, a good leadership team in place to be able to take your vision and implement it. Make sure they're on board. I think, the people part is probably one of the most important parts of this. If you get good buy-in from them, I think will really help to take your company to the next level.
As we both know, and dealing with and interacting with different companies, like in our peer groups, which is beneficial, is no company's the same, right? So really discovering what does that structure, what are those people, what is that makeup of the team, and what's the fit with your organization, but also what are some standards. I like the idea. I'd be curious to hear more at some point or get some information from you on that accountability chart, and what that looks like. But we'll go around our peer group table and discover quickly what is the role of a project manager or production coordinator? What is the role of your VP of sales, and how does that look? And every company has their own version of it, right? So
Yeah.
let's make it your own, but also really still learning from others is a constant effort.
Yeah. Yeah, and if that, even if you took the sales example, if you have different people owning the sales piece, then potentially get some conflict there. We had one person who was in charge of your revenue generation in the whole company. So when we set our our revenue goals for the year, then they had to have buy-in, and then it was up to them to cascade those revenue numbers to different departments, whether it be enhancement sales, whether it be, business developers, whether it be construction. So be able to sort of cascade those numbers down and then make sure they bought into them, those divisional heads. And, if one of those divisions was struggling, then that person would then jump in and figure out, well, do they need more training? What are some of the things we need to introduce to that department to get them back on track? But it allowed me to be able to go to one person, that sales manager who was accountable for sales, rather than trying to figure out,
Yeah.
Within each company or each division.
Yeah,
I-
it makes good sense.
I was thinking that, and when you implement new systems, and you were talking about established systems, and that you've been, up against a 70-year-old rhythm, if you will, and when you change these new systems, and there's buy-in, and you invest a lot of time into them, and then you're sensing that maybe it's not working, and you're hesitant to make a change. I was thinking, don't hesitate. If you feel like this new system isn't working, keep looking until you find the right one.
Yeah.
Well, platforms like this, which is nice, is it's not one person's idea, because in some regards with that, there's a guidance and there's a vision, but realistically, the reality of somebody knowing everything that's automatically going to be successful is unrealistic. But platforms that more people can buy into, like this that you're showcasing, of, hey, let's look at the broader picture, let's learn together, and let's evolve it together, I think is a valuable opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think, it's definitely, a program that can easily be self-implemented. There is some software out there like Bloom Growth. 90 is another software that can help with creating that framework to be able to log all these things and to do the timing. So, and then, obviously there are coaches out there in different parts of the country that can help to, initially kick this off. So there's so many resources out there to help you be successful. So, but yeah, this is just a good introduction, and I know Joe might be talking about this more at the TLR event. So, but I appreciate you showing up, Seth, and asking questions, and I'll get this recording out. Anything else before I jump off?
That's it from my end. I definitely will be sharing the recording with a few individuals of my leadership team, so they can get digest some alternative perspectives and see what pieces that we can roll out and what questions we may have that we can reach back out to you and get some more guidance.
Okay, cool.
Nice job breaking it down into easily understandable, digestible format, Robert. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and there's the Traction's a good book to recommend. The other one is What the Heck is EOS? So again, it's a good way tool or book to share with your leadership team so they can understand or read it before you have those meetings and figure out, is this something we want to implement? So cool. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate you.